everybody. We are really happy when Jay chooses our home to host Think Again and Faith Again. We love the energy and the spirit and the love we feel from everybody that comes here. So thank you, and I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you again for both of you for being so generous. I'm the lucky one that they have us here. So, speaking of dark and stormy night, I can't help but mention that there's a race going on right now on Grandeur Peak. And one of our fine members is going to be doing that tomorrow in your bare feet. And
I will have shoes
on. Anyway, running up for air is Jerry Campbell started that. He's a wonderful man a number of years ago. And he saw there was a problem with air quality in the valley. And so he came up with this race that's now in Colorado and Ogden and where else?
Washington.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So he spread it out from a number of years being here. He used to live not too far from Grandeur Peak, and he would go up and down and could see the pollution. So he came up with this race, and it funds organizations that help do clean air. Read Utah and can't remember what.
Oh, Utah.
Was it?
O2.
Yeah, probably O2 Utah. Yeah. So you don't have to run to donate. You could go on their site and donate. I'm a big advocate of clean air for us people. And if you're in Ogden, you can do it too. And thanks for some of you people who did come so far away from Park City and Heber and Ogden and down south a little ways. So appreciate it. Got a long list of thank yous here. Thank you, Madison, for taking care of our friends on Zoom, and thank you, friends who are on Zoom, for showing up that way. We appreciate you being here. And thanks to Faith Matters, who provides my Zoom account for us. So I appreciate them. They're always worth looking into. Got some great podcasts. And I want to thank, let's see. They didn't make it. Okay. Never mind on that. No. Okay. Sorry. I also want to thank Matt and Carrie. You guys came a long ways to be here with us. So I don't know.
Not as far as Ogden.
I don't know if you're on some speaking circuit that you're off every weekend, but thank you for making time. You should be, because your book is really good. One of the things I liked about Matt's book is he does incorporate somewhat of a memoir of his personal experiences, which makes it really meaningful. So I highly recommend it. You didn't bring some?
Yeah.
Good. Because I know one person specifically asked about that who wants to buy a book. And I'm grateful for Carrie being willing to do some music at the end. Thank you. And for Lorraine bringing that to my attention.
Oh, thanks, Lorraine.
Let's see, and Spencer, thank you, because you're the one that introduced me to Matt. So I appreciate that very much. Spencer and I have enjoyed some lovely long conversations about faith. And so I think this fits in really well. Some of those conversations, and will be useful for people. Just as a matter of note, so Think Again, Faith Again, lots of people from different backgrounds come. So probably most are from an LDS tradition, but not all that attend. Like I know a number of people are here tonight that have never been Mormon. So I just want you to hold that and keep that in mind as we speak. So try not to do Mormon speak, that might not make sense to some people, or just be sensitive to it, that God speaks to everybody all over the place, and that's part of what your message is. And then, I don't see my known atheist friend here, but some people don't even believe, and that's okay too. So I do have atheists come sometimes. But again, just something to be aware of. So we're going to start with Spencer. Thank you for doing some music, and then we'll have an invocation. Remember who I add? Oh, Adeline. Adeline will give us an invocation, and we'll go to there. There, so people can see it. Okay. So here, no. Let me do this. Are we me?
So I'm really grateful for the invitation, Jay, to play. Matt's book
came at a time when I needed Matt's book in my life. And among all of the things that I love about it, one of the threads for me was that read to me a little bit like a love letter to literature from him. And among some other things in my life, including this song that I want to play, gave me a new and renewed appreciation for the humanities and art. I am looking at the paintings in this great museum. News of one more shooting made me long to cry. I'd love to work for justice and for peace and freedom, but right now I need a refuge that is quiet and dry. So I come to see the beauty when the world is tragic. An umbrella stops the rain, but it won't dry the sky. This play of light and shadow is transcendent magic, and it changes the whole universe, at least inside. In the ocean deep, when these waves are steep, every home I keep betrays me. It's the beautiful that saves me. So I'm walking past these priceless works from famous artists, but in between those canvases, it's cold white wall. These painters found a crucible for their catharsis, but they knew that no rendition could contain all. I'm fearful of the riptide in the sea, sorrow. I don't have any faith to make these waters part. And if I venture out there, I would drown harder. And it seems so overwhelming, I can barely start. The ocean deep, when these waves are steep, every home I keep betrays me. It's the beautiful Now the woman at the rain check hands me back my raincoat. Stay warm out there, she smiles, looks me in the eye. I take her simple kindness like we're in the same boat, and we all need some protection from the storm outside. We are underneath the cloud of all this dark emotion, but I'll make it through the storm. Warmth. A wooden hull can rest upon a deep, dark ocean, and a window into beauty is the place to start. The ocean deep, when these waves are steep, every home I keep betrays me. It's the beautiful saves me. It's the beautiful
Yeah, I don't mind. You might come it up with this so we can,
Oh, sure.
Zoom people can hear you. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Dear God, we are so grateful to have this group to gather together and think of different ways of viewing religion or spirituality, and we offer gratitude for the thoughts that have been prepared for tonight, that we can all be inspired to be better and to be more humble and kind. And we're grateful for Jay and for the presenter tonight and for this beautiful music. And we see these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, Matt, you know, the time's coming, you're gonna have to sit in this chair. And be the center of attention. Yes, thank you. Did actually remember this time. I did want to just begin, I didn't get all the way through Matt's book. But who has read Matt's book? You know that guy, right?
I do.
I know his parents pretty well. He's a great guy. Great parents. Anyway, it's really resonated with me. And again, I didn't know, I still don't know Matt well at all. But I'm very appreciative of Spencer for introducing the book and to me. Because there's much that resonated with me. And I think that'll resonate with you. I wanted to just share a couple of passages that meant a lot to me that I read that kind of will give you maybe a flavor of this. He says, to that extent, I seemed at church that I was hearing so much more about what was right than what was true, especially in the late 1980s and early 1990s. For truth, I was coming to believe, is about more than clarity of doctrine. It's also about the particularity and intensity of our experience, about all those silent internal pressures and unforeseeable circumstances that shape our minds, our hearts, our spirits. Truth, it seems, is about discerning God's presence in unimaginable, seemingly random situations. It's about feeling the trace of God's Spirit in the lives of others, and through it, coming to love others, even or especially when their experiences unsettle our sense of rightness. Rightness is loud and has all the answers. Truth speaks quietly, a virtual whisper across the wind and waves. For our biggest questions don't lend themselves to cheap aha epiphanies in which all is suddenly resolved. Many such questions may not seek explanations as much as remedy, like storm-torn vessels begging harbor. We need the kind of healing found in the extended presence of Christ. I just thought that was profoundly beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got my own thank yous. I'll be brief, but thank you to Jay for the invitation, to Spencer for arranging them. By that song, that was really lovely.
It was.
Yeah, thank you so much. The Ivans, is that the name? Did I get that right? Yeah, for allowing us to come here tonight. This is a beautiful space. And everybody who came in here, despite the fact that the rain is starting to snow. I'm surprised that you came. I'm delighted. I'm flattered. Thank you so much. My wife Carrie and I are honored to be in your presence. So I am a professor of English at BYU, and I wasn't trained in. I teach these days a lot of literature and spiritual experience, Christian spirituality in particular. I was trained more in things like Scottish literature. which is very different from this. Remember years ago, when I was actually hired to teach at a university in Scotland, Scottish literature, and I was there a few months early, just on another speaking assignment, and I went to the ward we were going to be in there, and I show up on the Sunday, and there's some guy there saying, "Yeah, so you're new." I said, "Oh, well, not yet. We're going to be in the ward in a while. I've been hired at the university." "Doing what?" I'm teaching Scottish literature. "You? What do you know about Scottish literature?" That's a good question. Anyway, but a few years after that, I felt compelled to speak to things that are of a special importance to me, and spiritual experience, which takes a lot of forms. For me, ultimately, that means our relationship with God. That had special importance to me. And the question was, well, if you tried to teach to that, how would you do it? What would you say? And Ryder is a former student in one of the classes I taught on that subject, and an excellent student, by the way. So he's been through. So this will sound kind of familiar to you, like old times in some ways. I'm still working on new things and new. So what I'm going to do tonight is just have a conversation with you about what spiritual experience is. I'll read parts of this book here and there, but Jay was very clear. This is not going to be like just you giving a lecture. Fair enough. Like, I get it. So I'll read like snippets of like 2 minutes to 5 minutes, but in between, there's a handout. I want it. Can you pass that out or just around, Carrie? And it's got some excerpts from things, 3 poems, and 3 other passages of text. 1 scriptural, 2 that are scholarly about spiritual experience. And if you wanted to ask about anything that I had Jay circulate, that's also fair game. All right. So that's how we'll proceed.
What's different than what we put online than what we gave?
It's similar. There's some things in there in addition to,
Okay.
which and some things are. And I thought I brought in a couple of pieces. And I thought it'd be easy to look at the poems. Might be easier than hold them. It's recycled paper. I'll take it back and recycle it again if you. I'll recycle it if you like. So right. Let me begin. First of all, this book title, Life to the Whole Being, subtitled The Spiritual Memoir of a Literature Professor. That phrase, life to the whole being, that may ring a bell for some of you. Let me quickly here. It's a phrase from Parley P. Pratt, 1855, his book, Key to the Science of Theology. A really great theological treatise. It's like kind of a cosmology in some ways. It's a fascinating book. That's what he writes about the Holy Ghost. This is probably through Pratt. The gift of the Holy Ghost quickens all the intellectual faculties, increases, enlarges, expands, and purifies all the natural passions and affections, and adapts them by the gift of wisdom to their lawful use. It inspires, develops, cultivates, and matures all the fine-toned sympathies, joys, tastes, kindred feelings, and affections of our nature. It inspires virtue, kindness, goodness, tenderness, gentleness, and charity. It develops beauty of person, form, and features. It tends to health, vigor, animation, and social feeling. It invigorates all the faculties of the physical and intellectual person. It strengthens and gives tone to the nerves. In short, it is, as it were, marrow to the bone, joy to the heart, light to the eyes, music to the ears, and life to the whole being. Back into that, there's the title of the book, Life to the Whole Being.
What's the it? What was the first thing?
The gift of the Holy Ghost.
Oh,
It strengthens.
I think
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I hate that one.
yeah,
Right for trouble.
I don't want to.
yeah. That's right. That's right. What's the antecedent of question, right? Yeah, right. Mystery, right? Yeah. I had read that as a younger person, and in my own religious, community, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We don't talk about the Spirit in all those kinds of ways. Typically, we tend to sort of talk about the Spirit testifies to what's true, and it tells you what to do, and that's great. That's important, kind of like testifies what's true. Epistemology tells what to do. Action, very important categories, but not nearly as expansive as what I'd seen here. And so I began studying the subject more. And we reach a paragraph here that distills down some more of the research around spiritual experience, and might read a passage or two. Then I'll have us turn to the handout and talk through a couple of these passages. All right. Spiritual experiences are among life's richest, fullest, profoundest, most exquisitely meaningful, most deeply personal, empowering, enlightening, and life-giving phenomena. They blend body and mind, soul and circumstance, connecting what and who we presently are to greater, more expansive versions of ourselves. In this way, spiritual experiences give us direction as we gaze toward the future, and also help us make sense and meaning of our pasts. By assisting us in communing through what is best in ourselves, with what is good outside ourselves, such experiences guide us to what is sacred, significant, and whole. As such, spiritual experiences foster healing. What is more, they animate our minds, sharpening our powers of discernment, enlivening our perceptions, awakening our memories, heightening our imaginations, and deepening our empathy. They promote thriving at collective as well as individual levels, attuning us more vibrantly to our environments and inspiring us to greater care for creation. These experiences fill us with hope and purpose. They motivate and console. They direct us to what is truest, best, and most beautiful. They transform our character. When I began reading the scholarship on spiritual experience, very little of which comes from my own faith tradition. There's a lot of it in the broader history of kind of the mystical tradition in Catholicism. A lot of it there. There's quite a bit in mainline and even some evangelical Protestantism. You find lots in the Buddhist tradition, Hindu tradition. There are atheists who are into spirituality. I'll tell you a story about that. I read a really interesting piece on spirituality from a woman who's a scholar. She's an Italian philosopher who works in Holland. And she wrote this interesting article about an atheistic spirituality. I mean, atheism being an attachment to natural world and the sort of flows of human attention and being. But she doesn't believe in God and was very clear about this. I saw her at a conference after reading this piece, walked up to her and I said, by the way, I've read that article you wrote. That was really quite compelling. She goes, you like that? I said, yeah, I like that. I'm glad you like that. Around here, and she pointed around the conference venue. My colleagues, they don't like this article. They don't like it at all. But all my students, they're all into spirituality. They're all vegan. They all do yoga. They all like Barry Sanders. So spirituality is a broad category, right? Point being, and there's a lot of really good scholarship on it. And when I began reading it and thinking about my own faith tradition, my own experience in relation to what I was reading, I kind of distilled things down. What I just read kind of comes from some of that on the handout. Let's look at this. The very first thing here, it says conclusion. Not first page, but the staple's never in the right place. I cannot figure out how to get the staple in the right place in the copy machine. I cannot figure it out. You like that? Yeah, it's. I'm being cool. I'm just being cool. Yeah.
It only happens to English majors.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, this comes from a really important book. It was sort of a lectures, 1901, given by William James. Some of you might be familiar with James's work. This is from his book, The Varieties of Religious Experience. And religious experience for James, what we would call spirituality. So the varieties of spiritual experiences is what he's talking about here. And I think what he's doing, what James did is he didn't do like the research the way that a contemporary psychologist would do it by kind of doing surveys and tests. He read accounts from a whole wide variety of religious traditions, all over. Even find Joseph Smith in his book here and there, which is interesting. So all these things, at the end of the book, and in the lecture he gave, and in the book that we read today, he summarizes what his findings are about kind of common threads of spiritual experience across a whole range of traditions. And this is what he kind of gets down to. Can I have actually for Zoom purposes, I read it, people read it in the room. What works best for Zoom?
As long as they're fairly close to the mic.
All right. Does someone want to read? I'm on this page 528. It says, summing up in the broadest possible way the characteristics of the religious lives you found them, it includes the following beliefs. Can someone get numbers 1 through 3, for example? Someone close? Thank you.
Number one, that the visible world is part of a more spiritual universe from which it draws its chief significance. Number two, that union or harmonious relation with that higher universe is our true end. And three, that prayer or inner communion with the spirit thereof, be that spirit God or law, is a process wherein work is really done and spiritual energy flows in and produces effects, psychological or material, within the phenomenal world.
All right. Now let's unpack it a little bit. So the three characteristics that unite all these traditions, he says, the visible world, or what we see, is part of a larger unseen universe. There are things out there beyond what we see. All spiritual traditions affirm this, he says. Second thing, union with that unseen universe is why we are here. That's our purpose, he says. That's what we're here for. Number three, prayer or inner communion with the spirit thereof is a process wherein work is really done and spiritual energy flows in and produces effects, psychological or material, within the phenomenal world, in the world we experience. All right. So there are ways we access that unseen world. And when we try to access it through our spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, other forms of practice, we can actually connect to that and feel a connection to why we are here, what is most important to us, or what other people, other scholars say is of ultimate value. Ultimacy is the term often used to describe spiritual things. That's William James, 1902. This was published, 1901, the lectures were given. You turn over to the page right on the other side of it. It says chapter 4. This is a book by a scholar named Wesley J. Wildman called Religious and Spiritual Experiences. And that was a good shot, by the way. So I handed it right underneath the couch. So when you move, you'll find it. Yeah. Anyway, this is a book. Wildman is a scholar. He's Australian. Works at Boston University. He himself professes no belief in God. He's into a naturalistic spirituality, he says. But he's done a lot of really great research. His book combines work in religion, philosophy, psychology, neuropsychology, so how the brain functions, sociology. He brings all these together and crunches down some really important, interesting kind of facts. On that left-hand column, page 104, I just want to look at, if we can, the column definition, that category, that subcategory definition. You see that? But I'll read this part of it, at least. He calls spiritual experiences intense experiences. Intense meaning they function in the brain and they turn the brain on in certain ways. He said intense experiences involve strong and broad neural activation corresponding to existential potency and wide awareness, involving both strength of feeling and interconnectedness of ideas, memories, and emotions in such a way as to engage a person with ultimate existential and spiritual concerns and leverage significant personal change and social effects. Here's where, okay, the English major, we know how to create periods, use semicolons, right? It's kind of a running on sentence, but it has a lot of really great information in it. So we can unpack this a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, I'm just repeating what I just read. Intense experiences involve strong and broad neural activation. Translate that. What does that mean? Strong and broad neural activation means what?
Thought-provoking.
Thought-provoking, good. Else, would you?
You feel something.
You feel something, yeah, good. Neural activation, the brain's kind of like kicking in, something, it's like the brain's turning on, right? Something is kicking up here, right? Corresponding to existential potency. Now there's kind of a fancy phrase. What does that mean, existential potency? Or take a shot at that one?
Very existential.
Very existential. It is indeed. Very existential. That's a very good point. And you know, any takers on that? Existential potency, what might that mean?
Heightened awareness?
Yeah, it's good. Existentially, things that pertain to our existence, that become alive, they become very vivid, heightened, right? Good. Yeah, existential potency and wide awareness involving both strength of feeling and interconnectedness of ideas, memories, and emotions. And this is really interesting. You pause right there. What happens when you hook somebody's brain up, these nodes, in a laboratory, and you have them go about some kind of spiritual practice, and they then report, I'm now experiencing some kind of spiritual feeling. What happens to the brain waves, right, when that happens? And the answer is parts of the brain light up that are attached to depth of feeling at the same time as memory, emotion, and heightened cognition happen. Spiritual experience is turning the brain on. It's brain on maximum functionality, right? Which is a really fascinating thing. I mean, if you ever want to really try to learn something quickly, try to put yourself in a spiritual frame of mind. The brain's turning on, like literally what's happening, right? He goes on, in such a way as to engage a person with ultimate existential and spiritual concerns. So it attunes us to things that we think for us are the most important things, reasons for which we live, the most important reasons why we're here, and leverage significant personal change and social effects. It changes who we are, it changes how we live, it changes our sense of why we think we're here. Go back to William James on that first page. When James is talking about things like union with the higher universe is our true end, and that prayer brings us into communion with, he's talking about this sense of existential potency in Wesley J. Wildman's words, right? That connects us here. But there are further effects he associates with spiritual experience. Numbers 4 and 5. Can you get those again for us?
Yeah, you bet. A new zest, which adds itself like a gift to life and takes the form either of lyrical enchantment or of appeal to earnestness and heroism. 5, an assurance of safety and a temper of peace, and in relation to others, a preponderance of loving affections. Good.
So what are the traits of a spiritual experience? A new zest, which adds us like a gift to life, a sense that life has purpose, meaning, extra heightened beauty. I love the lyrics. You wrote that?
I did not write that.
You did not write that? Okay, it's lovely. And those lyrics about beauty, but is that beauty? But is that line against Spencer? Beauty saves me.
Yeah, the beautiful saves is what saves me.
Yeah. Okay. Right. That was lovely. Beauty was something you feel attached to that beauty, and you get a sense that it really is uplifting. That's this kind of zest that Jade was talking about. It's the form either of lyrical enchantment. It's how essentially he said things like it turns on your imagination, right? It kind of helps you kind of think and feel in new ways, or appeal to earnestness and heroism. It brings out your deepest character, your best self. And 5, it gives you an assurance of safety, a sense of well-being, right? A temper of peace, and in relation to others, a preponderance of loving affections. You kind of find yourself loving people more. Spiritual experience is really amazing, right? So when you go back to Parley P. Pratt, in 1855, the gift of the Holy Ghost quickens all the intellectual faculties, turns the brain on, right? Increases, enlarges, expands, and purifies all the natural affections and adapts them by the gift of wisdom to the lawful use. Inspires, develops, cultivates, and matures all the fine-toned sympathies, joys, tastes, kindred feelings, and affections of our nature. It inspires virtue, kindness, goodness, on and on. He's saying the Spirit is what turns us on, opens us up, and connects us to what is deepest, truest, most profound as we understand our existences and those of lives of those around us. Right? It's an utterly amazing facet of our human experience. And for those who believe in whether it's God or some, like James, unseen universe, it is what connects us to what is outside of ourselves, but explains kind of why we're here. The paradox of spiritual experiences, the more we connect to what's outside of ourselves, the more fully ourselves we become. We're not the most ourselves when we're on our own. We're the most fully ourselves when we're connected to what is outside of ourselves. That's the paradox. You're the most you when you're not you alone. All right. So here's my question. What the heck is poetry doing here then? In this handout, why did I send poetry around? So few people in the modern world actually read poetry for pleasure. And if you read this, I doubt it was pleasure for you either, right? So why is poetry here? Did you read those poems, anybody? Did you read? Why, writer, I'm gonna call you up, writer of the class, right? So writer, I subjected the class week after week to the reading of poems. Was that just pure torture? It may have been, but why, what was the rationale for why I did it?
It was not. We were all English majors. It was a senior capstone course, so it's not. Matt had handpicked a whole semester's worth of poems to read, and I remember we started the semester with just very obvious, clear poems that were talking about some majestic spiritual experience, and we just started to pick up on how, like, we can do this academic study of spiritual experiences, but people are always seem to be at a loss of words about how to describe them because they're so personal, like you said. And so poetry is an avenue to figure out how to describe these things. And as the semester went on, Matt started to bring up poems that were more obscure, where the spirituality of the poem or the spiritual experience in the poem was hidden under layers and depths. And so these are some of those.
That was really impressive because in between our class and now, he's been through law school. But that didn't knock all that out of his brain, right? And yeah, that was very impressive. Thank you so much. Yeah. So I want to look at a couple of poems here with you, right? And that are poems. I chose poems. Oh, one more thing. This is a scriptural passage. All right. One more. Sorry, scripted myself. The next page over is a couple of passages here from the Doctrine and Covenants. Section 8. This is section 8 of the Doctrine and Covenants for Latter-day Saints. Is one of the go-to places that talks about revelation, talks about kind of a certain kind of spiritual experience. And I want to bring your attention to a couple of things that I think are really subtle and often overlooked. In section 8, verses 2 and 3, you read these in my religious community all the time. Does someone have D&C 8, sections 2 and 3? And then we're going to go to the poem Cadman by Denise Levertov.
In this circle here.
Okay, yeah, so this circle. Do you have this, Carrie? Section 8, verses 2 and 3, beginning, yea, behold. You see that?
Yes, I don't have my glasses on, but yea, behold, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you and which shall dwell in your heart. Now, behold, this is the spirit of revelation. Behold, this is the spirit by which Moses brought the children of Israel through the Red Sea on dry ground.
Thank you. A couple quick points about this. I'll tell you in your mind and in your heart. I've been taught this again and again. People often say, "Yeah, the Holy Ghost talks to you. It can be an idea, or it can be a feeling, or it can." The thing is, if you look at William James and Wesley Wildman, they're kind of saying, "No, it's not an idea or a feeling." The key word here in this verse is the word "and," mind and heart. Why? Because a spiritual impression, turning the brain on, connects depth of feeling, heart, to amplitude of idea. Right? Both those things are happening in a way that's distinctive. You say, that's not just a feeling. There's something else happening here in this that's got a different kind of register. It's bigger, it's more open. There's something about this feeling which is a different kind of a thing. And verse 3 is interesting. This is the spirit of revelation. Behold, this is the spirit by which Moses brought the children of Israel through the Red Sea on dry ground. What's the rationale of having the Red Sea mentioned? That's a famous biblical story, right, in the book of Exodus. Why mention that story in this context? This is revelation. It's like Moses going through the Red Sea on dry ground. That was revelation, right? I mean, anybody got the connection there?
Is there some metaphor of the revealing the dry ground?
Yeah, that's exactly how I think this is right. Revelation is what, and revelation here is also, I think it's a figure for broader set of spiritual experiences. It opens territory where there was no territory. You see things differently, and so there's a path. There was no pathway. Suddenly, pathway, clarity. Spiritual experience brings a kind of a clarity, an insight, a realization, because something all these things up. Yeah, please.
It seems like it also connects the tradition, this new restoration tradition to the old tradition.
That's a great point.
So there's this flow of revelation through the ages.
I think it's a very good point. Yeah, that's right. Good. And even what Wilder says about memory is kind of opened up, right, in a spiritual experience. Here would be kind of a cultural memory of a broader tradition, right? There's kind of, yeah, that's a great point. Thank you very much. Yeah, good. Okay, so now I want to look at the poem. And I want to ask, the reason why I love focusing on poetry is the poetry. This is a poem Cadman by Nice Leverhulme. It's the next thing over at the top of the, it's a poem that starts in the bottom left-hand column. Okay, looks like this. Rach, does you see it?
Hey, ma'am,
Yeah,
before we dive into that, I was curious if anybody had any other thoughts.
okay, yeah, please.
Is anybody? Everything, if they want to.
I'm a little curious, Matt, if I don't want to sidetrack it, but I'm just curious about the word spirit and spirituality. Why that word and what is it? What's, not to get rigid about definitions, but
Yeah.
why is that word being used and what is that just, that's the word people use? I don't know.
Yeah, okay, good. Spirit is the word that we use because it's the word that's translated in the New Testament into the English, which comes from the Greek word pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, which is the word for breath, right? So the idea in the Greek, which is the original language of the New Testament, right, is that God's spirit, God's breath is brought into us and animates us and gives us life. Right? Spirituality is just kind of a neologism drawn out from the pneumatics, the breath and the breathing of what that actually means. And actually, if we had time, it's interesting. At what point does spirituality per se become a thing that we actually study? In fact, about which theologians even write? The answer is like the 1960s. If you go back to sort of 1550, there's a mystical tradition, but they use different words like mysticism, other words for this kind of connection. The spirituality part is more a function of more recent decades. Yeah.
Put it in a category more or less to study it, sort of.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
But the original spirit is
breath.
the breath, the animation.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that pretty universal in other cultures and religions? What would they be saying?
I mean, in the Hebrew, what is the word for it? It's ruach means, yes, it's breath again there. So when they get it in the Greek, they're getting it out of the Hebrew tradition. So Judaism has that word, as does the early Christian traditions, right? And on it goes through. But I'm forgetting what the word actually is. I knew this once. I'm forgetting it. I don't have writer's brain apparently. In Islam.
Okay.
And it's different in Buddhism. There it's much about breath and meditation, but not a sense that God's entering in as much as it's about your breath allows you to center yourself and kind of connect the things outside yourself through that centered breathing. Yeah.
I really like your take on the 8th section of the Doctrine and Covenants where you say mind and spirits and mind or spirit. But I was wondering if one thing that came to me since Jay said it is something come to your mind. Since we're all imperfect beings with imperfect points of view, what we formulate in our mind is probably not in harmony with truth totally, okay? And so I feel like when I have revelation, the heart tells me, hey, you're kind of on the right track, and, it makes me feel good, but you're probably not right there yet. Have you had any thoughts about that?
Do I have thoughts about it? Yeah, no, I love that insight. I love that insight. I don't know how many of you have what you consider to be some kind of spiritual practice that you try to maintain. I certainly have one. It's the one that I derived through my own faith tradition. I've found that when I feel connected to the spirit, a couple things happen that are hallmarks of that. One is there's something affirmative in there, a sense of connection that's real, but then there's something else counterintuitive that I wouldn't have imagined would be part of the impression I've received. And that's, I say that, Karen and I would talk about it, I say, that's God's way of reminding me that I whatever I thought I knew. In other words, whenever I have, if I pray earnestly, right, and I feel like I got an answer to prayer, if the prayer is just, excellent, Matt, you got it, I know it's counterfeit. Yeah, right. There's always it's like good. but, or okay, and, right? This is, it's that, and then it's like, wait, what? So that I come away from it with something I hadn't quite thought, caught, captured, and that can be really affirming, or it can be really unsettling. And this is an important point. Spiritual experience, let's just think about scriptural examples from the long tradition of the Bible, right? They're not all, but they're very rarely warm and fuzzy. They often are things that make you catch your breath and say, oh my heavens, no, please.
Wrestling.
Yeah, a wrestle. I can't do that. I mean, Moses, you know, I want you to start going through the Red Sea. Like what right? Not comfortable, right? They can be intimidating. They can be off-putting, unsettling. There are reasons for this, I think. It really is about, as William James puts it, a connection to the unseen universe, or as I might put it, but it's a connection to God. You know, it's God's way of saying, good, but you're not. You're right. You've got a long ways to go.
I've got more for you.
Got more for you, right? And let's begin.
Also unsettling when the answer is love that person.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, I
Love
had
them,
that.
just
Okay,
love them.
You want them to change.
2 days ago, I had a department meeting that I found especially unhappy. And nothing really awful got said. It just brought up old department dynamics that aren't entirely happy. And I came away with kind of thinking some unhappy thoughts about a couple of my colleagues, as I'm sure they did about me. And I was walking actually from campus to Provo Central Station. I've been taking that walk when it's not snowing. And I'm walking, and I got as far as the Provo City Center Temple. I kind of cut through a shortcut to take through there, and it occurred to me I was not on the right vein by having the thoughts I was having. That I needed to be more accepting, more loving, more forgiving. That I was in the wrong in some of the thoughts I was holding. So that was an example of a spiritual moment, a small one, a small impression, right? But that was about the difficulty of the thing that I didn't want to do that I needed to do, and that to me is a classic example of a spiritual impression. Not easy, but you know, it's, yeah, that's right. That rings true.
I'll speak for myself, but maybe others feel this, that we have a really difficult time relating to the institution that we're supposed to love. And I have not heard the word imagination ever used in church. And to me, you can't have free agency unless you have an imagination. You can even imagine all the possibilities. There are never just two.
Yeah.
There are a whole bunch of them, but I don't know how imagination works. That kind of imagination with a top-down church where all ideas have to start at the top, and don't tell me about starting the primary. I've heard that. I'm sick of that story, because I have made multiple suggestions, and someone will say, "Oh, you really think outside the box?" And I think, I don't even know how to find the box. I'm just that way, and it's always no, 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 no. We don't do it that way, and I think a lot of the people who leave just are looking for an outlet for their imagination, their lyrical enchantment, they're this, and yet every church looks the same, every song is the same. If I have to sit through the standard verse one more time, I'm gonna scream. There's nothing creative, and I just, how do you deal with that? You go to your class, you have this lecture, you have these students. The rest of us don't get that. So
Your reading list. All right, you know, okay, I
Department meeting.
yeah, it is. First of all, I feel your pain. Carrie will tell you.
sir. Go on.
Yeah, no, I'm being cavalier a little in that phrase, because that's got resonance in American cultural history, right? Yeah, right, you know. A lot of pain for a lot of people. I have felt plenty over the years and still do, right? In a lot of ways